This is Kate Wechter. I'm a program administrator in the Office of Academic Support with DPI. This session is going to highlight an overview of ND Counts, which is also known as Senate Bill 2213. The course of the 2025 legislative session, this policy was known as the science of math. The senator that introduced this bill referred to it as such more so as just an ease for the legislators. Um, it wasn't necessarily pertaining to the federal level science of math work. This policy in its final iteration is very closely aligned with the science of reading statute. So it was referred to as Science of Math and Senate Bill 2213. Since becoming statute, it has been re-referred to as ND Counts. That is an acronym. The Counts part stands for Cultivating Outcomes Through Unified Numeracy Teacher Support. Code on this slide is going to take you directly to the final iteration of the ND Counts statute. This session is going to just briefly overview the intent of the bill, and then I will briefly discuss each section and what those requirements will look like for school districts. This policy was developed in collaboration with legislators and a work group comprised of state agency personnel, REA personnel, and district representatives. Several of those individuals were able to collaborate with a national vendor known as SchoolKit. SchoolKit has done a lot of work with other states, and they invited us to be part of a community of practice with some of those states. That community of practice provided North Dakota agencies and personnel and members of that work group with a lot of resources and tools on what a good math policy looks like and what that implementation entails at each level. We determined throughout that community of practice kind of the highest needs for our schools and used that to speak to what this policy should all contain. So Senate Bill 2213, also known as ND Counts, an act to create and enact a new section to Chapter 15.1-13 and two new sections to Chapter 15.1-21 of the North Dakota Century Code relating to mathematics curriculum, professional development, screening and intervention, related admin rules and reporting requirements, and mathematics instructor competency. So I will be going through each of those sections and what that means for North Dakota schools going forward. Section 1 and 2 are going to outline the teaching license section as well as mathematics instruction competency. So Section 1, Teaching License, Mathematics Instruction Competency, the board shall ensure a candidate for teacher licensure who will be certified to be a secondary mathematics teacher demonstrates competencies in direct and explicit mathematics instruction and pedagogy. So ND ESPB, so that's our Education Standards and Practices Board, will primarily be implementing Sections 1 and 2. ESPB had the opportunity to meet with a committee of NDDPI, higher ed, and K-12 educators to review and revise the educator prep program math standards. So all of the universities and colleges in our state that provide teaching degrees, educator prep programs, and then teacher licensure met to review these math standards that they all have to follow for program approval. One other thing to indicate with this, and I will discuss this a little more at length, DPI did a thorough review of, kind of where our highest needs lie to drive this policy. So in grades 4 through 8, primarily middle school, we noticed that about half of the teachers that taught middle school math were either elementary certified or secondary certified. And so, what we've noticed within those gaps is that if you were an elementary certified teacher, a lot of times what would happen is the teacher would find their passion in primary grades, right? Kindergarten, first grade, second grade. Um, However, upon completion of their degree, the only job opening was middle school math. And because of ESPB, kind of adhering to the teacher shortage and doing their part, doing what they can, they did change the licensing requirements. So those with an elementary education degree can teach K through 8 in any subject. So what happens is we have this block of teachers that their passion lies in elementary school, and they have a very good grasp of direct and explicit instruction and more of those pedagogy features, right? How to teach to engage young learners. However, um, they do lack or felt not as confident in the actual mathematics content. And so we have really effective teachers that are uncomfortable with the content that they are teaching. On the flip side of that, with secondary licensed teachers, we have a group of educators who are very knowledgeable in mathematics content and maybe lack some of the confidence in how to engage younger learners. So, to address this gap in both content and instructional strategies, that is where this piece of the policy comes into play. The second section of this piece, section 2, is actually an amendment to the previous, and if you'll note, the effective date is now July 1st, 2027. So what we did to kind of slow down or ease implementation across all school districts is we have a staggered effective date depending on grade level. So this piece of policy does not go in effect until 2027. So in July 1, 2025, we are talking about secondary mathematics teachers, and in 2027, we are folding in the elementary education teachers. Again, the policy, the requirements are the same for both. It's just a different effective date. And just to note, ESPB will be implementing this and will provide further information as needed in revising those mathematics standards and what that means for teachers who already have a teaching license. All right, section 3 of this policy talks about mathematics curriculum, professional development, and intervention. So section 3, a new section to chapter 15.1-21 of the North Dakota Century Code is created and enacted as follows. Each school district and non-public school shall ensure the portion of its curriculum which is related to mathematics is based on evidence and research, includes differentiated instruction, is aligned to the state standards, and focuses on the following. We have foundational skills and competencies. Those foundational skills listed and competencies come directly from our North Dakota 2023 K-12 mathematics content standards. NDDPI is currently working with our REAs and school kit to build up the capacity of what this professional learning will look like. We are hopeful to provide some options this winter and into spring that meet the full intent of the law. Any communication or information regarding professional learning opportunities will be put forth in the DPI messenger. So again, that effective date for grades 4 through 8 is July 1st, 2025. We ask that districts within this first school year of implementation just begin kind of looking at what their current PD plans are before we can offer something that will satisfy the requirements of this policy. So the other part of this section would be PD and intervention. So provide continuing professional development for teachers of mathematics, including special education teachers and school leaders, which focuses on best practices in mathematics instruction, including explicit and differentiated instruction, data-driven decision making, and those topics under subdivision A. So as you're planning with your teachers and your school personnel on what to do for professional learning in the field of mathematics, we ask that you pay close attention to our North Dakota standards and those best practices in mathematics instruction. Again, this has an effective date of July 1, 2025. Um, Districts are also asked to implement formative assessments at regular intervals, adjust teaching practices accordingly, and provide targeted interventions for each student who needs additional support. Districts should also be implementing a research-based intervention program suggested by the state and adopted by the school board. This list of suggested intervention programs is currently being solicited and will be provided to districts within this school year so that they can select their intervention program based on that suggested list. I do want to note that North Dakota school districts are local control in the field of curriculum selection and intervention selection. So DPI does not have the authority to tell you what to use for curriculum and intervention. If you are looking for further guidance about what to choose, if you are in a buying year for curriculum, we definitely encourage districts to reach out to their REAs as they can provide more information about, specific curriculums because we know not all are created equal. And they can also provide a rubric of such to find a curriculum that best suits your district's needs and then how to fill gaps within specific curriculum. The third part of this, to be approved by the superintendent of public instruction, certify each school or non-public school shall ensure the placement of qualified teachers in grades 4 through 8, have integrated mathematics instruments used to identify deficiencies in the skills under subdivision A, and have integrated evidence-based instruction and assessment resources to support mathematics development and mastery. NDDPI is anticipated to roll out a report in October of next school year for districts to report on their progress in this section. So it will be similar to the Science of Reading report. We just don't have all the logistics figured out yet, primarily because the Science of Reading report is a building level report, and in this instance, grades 4 through 8 typically span more than one building. So please be on the lookout for further information regarding that reporting requirement. Okay, section 4 is an amendment to the previous section. So just note the effective date of July 1st, 2027. This is going to be pretty much all the previous sections requirements, but we are now folding in grades K through 3. So curriculum based on evidence and research includes differentiated instruction and is aligned to the standards. Same with our professional development requirements, includes evidence-based programming on the science of mathematics, which aligns with those same topics. There is one piece to this new section that I want to draw your attention to, and that is this section that's underlined here. So one requirement for grades K through 3 that is different from 4 through 8, and please note this is not effective until July 1st, 2027, but for a student in kindergarten through grade 3, each district shall use a screening process for early identification of mathematics deficiencies and characteristics of dyscalculia. What we are asking districts to do in this section is to screen children early for specific needs. We are not asking our teachers to diagnose dyscalculia. It's less like the dyslexia screening and more just a general process of identifying kids who need extra support. Number 2, inform the student's parent or legal guardian about the screening process, the student's results, and the importance of early intervention. Provide resources and guidance to the student's parents or legal guardian to support mathematics learning at home. And finally, if the student is identified as having characteristics of a mathematics deficiency, like dyscalculia or dysgraphia, we ask that districts develop an education plan with specific accommodations to help that student succeed. The last part of this section, number 2 listed there, a school district or special education unit shall provide a screening process under paragraph 1 for a student upon request by a parent, legal guardian, or teacher. So what this states is that any student K through 12 who hasn't previously been screened but is showing signs of a deficiency, a teacher, a parent, or a legal guardian can request a screening, and the school district or special education unit will provide that screening for that student. Okay, and again, this is just a continuation of this. Ensure the placement of qualified teachers, have integrated mathematics instruments used to identify deficiencies in those skills, and evidence-based instruction and assessment resources. Okay, the next section, section 5, this is rules and reporting to DPI and legislative management. So the Superintendent of Public Instruction, in collaboration with the K-12 Education Coordination Council, shall adopt rules to implement Section 3 of this Act, including rules to monitor implementation. The Superintendent of Public Instruction also will need to provide periodic reports to the legislative management on the implementation and effectiveness of Section 3 in this Act. That is DPI's responsibility to gather data and share it with the legislation. Just to put this on your calendar, there is a public comment hearing on the administrative rules attached to Senate Bill 2213. This is scheduled for December 2nd, 2025. So if you have strong feelings about the administrative rules draft, this is your time to share any questions or concerns you may have. This will be held at the North Dakota State Capitol building in person only. Okay, one of the last sections of this policy is section 6, which is going to highlight a pilot program. Beginning this school year and continuing through to the next, DPI will establish and operate a pilot program to provide screening services for students in grades 4 through 8. The pilot program must include individualized mathematics learning tools that use a skill level screener and skill level assessments to identify student needs, measure progress across multiple grades, and report on that progress to evaluate and improve student learning and performance outcomes. There is an appropriation of $300,000 to allocate for this pilot program, including the professional development for any teachers that are participating in this pilot and using the screening tool. DPI will compile data on the implementation of the pilot program, including student outcomes and the impact of each program used. And then we will report findings to the 70th Legislative Assembly as well. So further details of this pilot will be shared via DPI Messenger and our website once more information is available. We are currently in the RFI process to identify those screening and intervention programs that will be used, and then we will open up a district application to participate in the pilot. One thing to note is that if you are already using one of the programs that makes the cut of this list, you can apply to be a part of the pilot, and districts will receive funding for student seats or student licenses, as well as professional development on using that tool effectively in their classes. All right, to kind of conclude our presentation here, we have just a few updates. So I just reiterated the pilot program status. Once those reviews are done and we have our list solidified, that district application will be opened up and available for schools to apply. This pilot program will run this year and next year. More information and details will be shared via the messenger once it's available. As far as professional learning opportunities roll out, we are continuing to build our capacity within our ND Counts work group, which is comprised of state agency personnel and REA, NDREA personnel. So we are currently in the learning stages of the most effective mathematics practices. We are currently building some foundational work, professional learning opportunities, asynchronous courses, with the intention of providing those for schools and districts, hopefully in the spring, early spring of 2026. Lastly, what should districts be working on right now? We definitely encourage districts to currently review their professional learning plans in the field of mathematics for their teachers. We also encourage districts to reach out to their REAs for any additional support they may need. And lastly, we definitely encourage districts to review their current curricular resources, how they are aligned to our North Dakota content standards, and also working with the REAs on ensuring that the curriculum that is being used is aligned to those standards and gaps are filled as needed. So lastly, on the screen, there's some contact information for DPI personnel that are implementing this policy. My name is Kate Wechter. I am the program administrator, and Allison is the director of academic support and will also be fielding questions and supporting this lift. Thank you for your time today. Please reach out if you have any questions.